Hello,
Good
everybody.
morning, everybody. Welcome back to Lush Life, No Labels.
I'm Michelle.
This is Alfredo.
Thanks for listening in.
I know that our last podcast was way more silly and maybe not as substantive. I know we talked about the aliens and the dinosaur movie, but this podcast, I think, will be a little bit more on the serious side because we wanted to talk about self-help, personal growth.
Yes, exactly. So let's jump in this week with the story of the week. Alfredo, do you want to tell us what happened with you recently at work?
Yeah, so this actually happened to me today, and it was something that happened to me at work. Basically, just a coworker being rude, and it really made me upset, and it bothered me. And at first, I felt really angry, and once the anger subsided, then I kind of felt kind of down and sad, and I was just sitting in my office feeling kind of frustrated and upset. And sometimes in those situations you don't know how to get out of that because I knew even then I was sitting in my office. I wasn't angry anymore, but I was not in a good mood, and I was just saying to myself, how do I get out of this? How do I move forward?
Yeah, I think that's a very tough spot to be in, especially because there's already a lot going on at work. So if you're feeling down or if you're feeling angry, it can be hard to focus on your work and also be in that same environment with whoever or whatever you're having.
Exactly. And I do think when those things come up at work, it's totally different than when you have those problems in your personal life because you can't always talk about your feelings and express yourself with your coworkers, and you have to work. This is really a good segue into the topic of the week. We want to talk about what you do to pick yourself up and get yourself out of a rut when you get into those type of situation where you're feeling a way you don't want to, but feelings happen and you can't control them.
I am with you there. For me, especially as I get older, one of the things that I try to work on is having more and better emotional regulation. This is tough in many situations, but I think it's important for me personally to be able to pick myself up because it's great to have friends and family to talk to and other people who you can talk to about your issues or what you may be dealing with, but sometimes they're busy or people have other things that they're prioritizing. So it's important as adults, I think, for us to be able to pick ourselves up out of different situations, anger, sadness, whatever it may be, so that we can continue on with our day and not let it overtake us. That has definitely happened to me where I something happened in the morning and I just could not do anything else for that day and I kind of just shut down.
Exactly. And obviously, it's great when you have amazing friends that you can go to when you're down or upset and talk to them. And it's funny because that actually crossed my mind while I was sitting there angry and upset in my office was, okay, obviously I have people I can talk to about this, but at the end of the day, I always have to be with myself and I have to be able to deal with this on my own and have the right tools and know how to approach this to get out of this on my own without calling a friend. And sometimes you don't want to call your friends to complain or be negative.
Mm-hmm. Agreed there.
So obviously everyone's been in this situation. You've been in this situation where you're sad or you're angry and you don't want to feel that way, but you do. What do you usually do in those situations?
Some of the first things are to distract myself and try to take my mind off things if I find that I'm just sitting there concentrating on that situation. So I like to play music. I in my room, but I like to dance. I just try to do something or think of something that makes me happier than what I'm feeling at the moment, hoping that that will help me start moving away from whatever negative feeling it is that I'm. So that's what I'll do because it's pretty easy to pick up your phone and play music in those situations.
It's funny that you say that about dancing because I actually went to the gym after this whole incident today And just, putting my music in, being in my own world, sweating, helped me feel a lot better. So that's definitely a really important tool. But do you have any other tools, maybe about dealing with the problem head on?
Yeah, for sure. I try to reframe the situation and I think about why I actually feel the way I'm feeling at the moment. And once I figure that out, I try to think about, well, how am I going to get past this? Do I need to have a conversation with someone? Do I need to change the way I do something? Do I need to add something on? So I try to find solutions for myself. If it's something that's really nagging me, I think that's another way that once I'm calmed down from the initial feeling of negativity, I then start thinking about some solutions.
That's a really good point because that honestly, this morning was what I was trying to do because I felt so angry and annoyed and upset. And sometimes you just feel a certain way and it's not clear to you why you feel that way. And
Mhm.
it's important to take a step back and say, what's happening in my life, knowing myself and how I am, why am I feeling this way? And I agree with you, understanding first off why you feel that way. And I also do a lot of reframing, trying to put things in perspective. And also, I try to think about other situations where I felt this way because, for example, I felt really angry and then I felt upset and then sort of lonely and in my thoughts. But obviously, I felt that way at other times in my life. And to put that into perspective and to know that those things happen and then they pass.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd say, obviously, with anything else in life, you can't always find a solution to these things. So sometimes it's just how do you make it better in the moment or in that situation?
That's true.
So
And I
I
think
know,
we're hard on ourselves too. I think, sometimes you might just not have a great day and that's okay.
yeah, because the next day will be a new one. I do want to change gears a little bit and talk about situations where sometimes you feel a certain emotion but nothing has provoked it. Alfredo, do you want to give us an example of that?
So your point is like in this situation, I had a problem with a coworker that made me upset, but you are right. There are some situations where you just wake up sad or you feel sad for no real apparent reason. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, definitely that. And sometimes people feel emotions also due to hormones. I can say as a woman who
Oh,
menstruates,
true.
but yes. But we're talking about situations where, so for example, I live in the Northeast. Anyone in the Northeast can tell you that it's fall and the weather is not like it used to be in the summertime. So for me, I've lived in the Northeast for most of my life. And I can never get used to the cold. And something that I realized over the years is that as it gets closer to winter, I just get filled with a lot of sadness, call it seasonal sadness. And there's nothing that provokes it. Well, part of it is that the sun isn't out as much. It's much colder, and I get cold really easily. So I don't feel very comfortable outside. And I think I enjoy a lot of outdoor activities, but I can't do those in the wintertime. So it really limits my want to be social and also just limits the different types of things that I can find time with.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you're saying, this is just something that happens to you. When you have those situations where all of a sudden you feel a certain emotion out of nowhere, what would you say the emotion usually is? Is it anger, sadness? Like what is it? The negative emotion?
I learned this in my
HR?
necessary conversations class, actually. But there's like a list of emotions. I think for me, it's probably sadness. I'm trying to find the word for it. Yeah. I feel like really it's just everything. It's like depression. But
Hmm.
I'm just going to use sadness. I mean, it is seasonal depression, but I don't know. I think it's loneliness and sadness. Yeah, those are the two.
It's interesting that you say that though, because when I think about myself, that's how I feel when I have just out of nowhere, I feel sad and lonely. And to me, that's usually the emotions I feel. I usually don't feel angry. It's more kind of down, sad,
Mhm.
lonely.
Exactly, but it's hard to explain it to other people. And I'm sure some of our listeners may also have felt this way in the past, still
They
do.
definitely have.
Well, I don't want to assume, but there are some ways that I have tried to deal with this over time. As I mentioned before, I enjoy a lot of activities outside. So in the wintertime, one thing I try to do, which I'm still struggling with, is finding an indoor hobby that I really enjoy, as opposed to just doing an activity that passes by the time, because that doesn't make me feel fulfilled in the way. So, one thing I'm thinking about this winter is potentially taking music lessons.
Oh,
Yes,
what, like
actually,
an
drum.
oboe or a
No,
flute?
what?
Flute?
No. Actually, there are two instruments I'm interested in. They're both instruments that I grew up listening
Wait,
to
wait, 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 let me guess.
from my country.
Um, a bagpipe,
No. Am I from that country?
a
No,
harp, a harp.
no. I'm just going to tell you.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to figure it out. So one of them is the xylophone.
I was close.
With what?
The flute.
That was not even close. A xylophone is like a looks like a piano kind of with the. Okay, that's the first one. And the second one is so in my language, in my native language, we pronounce it as gimbe, but in the West, I guess, it's just called like the African drum or something. I don't know. I like it better the way we say it, but
So it's a non-translatable word.
it's drum. That's the other instrument that I would consider trying out for an indoor activity. So we'll see if I can find someone who can teach me those. The other thing that I've been slowly thinking about, but I'm kind of just lazy with, is reading, which I used to really love when I was growing up and I read a lot of books, but times have changed. So I'm slowly trying to get back into that. And I'm hoping that I catch the spark again with my love of reading, because that's something that I could spend hours doing, because I remember that being a really enjoyable time for me. So we'll see about that. I've tried so many things and failed at painting and crochet and a lot of other things that could keep me occupied. But the other thing too is, do you find that in those times with feeling lonely and sad that you want to socialize?
Sometimes yes,
Uh,
sometimes no. And I do think when I'm down or sad, I don't want to just be around anybody. There's certain people I'd like to be around. And it's usually like very good friends. It's not just I want to be around random people.
I agree with that. For me, I will text a friend who I'm close with or FaceTime or talk to them. But agree with something that you said, is that sometimes yes and sometimes no. So just because you feel lonely in that moment doesn't mean that you necessarily want to be around people. Maybe it's just that you need to do something, which is why I also try to do activities, because I can do different things and I feel like I want to do different things depending on how I'm exactly feeling in that moment.
I agree with you. And I think sometimes when I'm upset or angry or sad or lonely, obviously I accept that those are emotions that I feel, but that's not really who I am as a person. And sometimes I say to myself, I need to deal with this and confront this on my own. And I don't want to be around other people because that's not who I am. And I don't want them to see that in me. Obviously, I have friends that I can talk to about my feelings, but it's not reflective of how I am. And sometimes, even when you're upset, you can take things out on your friends or the people that are close to you, which I obviously don't want to do. So sometimes it's important to know, am I ready to be around people? Is this a good time? Am I really over this?
You're right about that.
So, some questions for our listeners, and these are questions that I even have been asking myself today. One thing I asked myself was, how have I dealt with these issues in the past when I get upset or angry or sad or lonely and I'm feeling down? What did I do before? And did I like how I handled it? Do I do I rate myself as having done a good job getting myself out of that negative place? That's definitely something I've thought about, and I think is a good question to ask yourself. But also, you can't be too hard on yourself because sometimes you just feel a certain way and it is what it is, and emotions are not logical. You can't control them.
You can control them in a way.
Can you?
I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. I'm saying people aren't just out of control all of the time. We do have moments where we control our situation or where we control our emotions.
But sometimes you just feel a certain way. Obviously, just because you're angry, it doesn't mean you should, it's okay for
Lash
you
out.
to
Yeah.
punch a wall
That's what
or
I
yell
mean.
at
Like, we can
people.
control how we react to those emotions. But yes, if our body feels away, then it is what it is. So something that I've been trying to work on is reframing the situation. My question, or more a bit of a challenge, is try to use different things to figure out how to get yourself out of your funk or your anger or your sadness, whether that's trying to distract yourself with music or video games or something else like that, or just trying to think about different ways of thinking. So try to reframe that situation and see if you can see a different perspective or if it can show you what you're actually, or show you a bit more about why you're feeling the way you're. Because I think the more we understand our bodies, of course, we should also be understanding our mind, because then they go together.
That's a good point because there's a pattern, and that was what was happening to me today because I thought, I've been here before, I felt this way before. And even that was sort of comforting to know that it's just an emotion and it'll pass. It's something that happened before and it'll happen again. And in some weird way, to me, that was comforting. I don't know if that makes.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right, everybody. Once again, we would like to ask for any listener questions, comments, ideas. We would really appreciate that.
Yes, and thanks all for continuing to support us and listening to us chat on this here podcast. So, with that, we will sign out for today.
Have a great rest of your week, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye bye.